Somewhere in Manila right now, an ordinary Filipino family is staring at an electricity bill they can't afford to pay. The father is a jeepney driver. He used to earn enough to cover the rent, the groceries, the school fees. Today, rising fuel costs are pushing him to consider giving up his jeepney route entirely. There are days I ask myself if I should even go out, or just stay home. He has no idea why this is happening. He doesn't know about the meetings. He doesn't know about the agreement. He doesn't know that right now, behind closed doors, Philippine officials are sitting across from Chinese negotiators, discussing a deal that could change the Philippines forever. And here is the part that should keep you up at night. The last time the Philippines made this deal, the Supreme Court called it unconstitutional. They're about to try again. This is what they don't want you to know. To understand why this is happening right now, you need to understand exactly where the Philippines is standing in 2026. President Marcos signed Executive Order number 110, putting the Philippines under a state of national energy emergency. The Philippines imports 98% of its oil from the Middle East, and the country was severely hit by the crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. 98%. Let that number sit for a moment. While other countries had buffers, strategic reserves, diversified energy sources, the Philippines had almost nothing. And when this crisis hit, the Philippines became the first country in the entire world to declare a national energy emergency. Not just in Southeast Asia, not just in Asia, in the world. As of March 20th, 2026, the Department of Energy confirmed the Philippines had an average of just 45 days of oil supply left, down from 55 to 57 days, when the war started only a month earlier. The clock was ticking. Diesel exceeded 130 pesos per liter. Gasoline surpassed 100 pesos. Gas stations across the country began closing. Airlines started suspending routes, and even now, with a ceasefire announced, the Energy Secretary has warned that fuel prices are unlikely to return to pre-war levels anytime soon. The damage to Middle East oil infrastructure is real, and the Philippines' structural vulnerability has not changed. This crisis exposed something that was always true but never fixed. The Philippines had been living on borrowed time, and the ordinary Filipino, the one staring at that electricity bill, had no idea that the decisions being made in response to this crisis would cost the country far more than money. Because it was in the middle of this panic that China made its move. And here is where the story turns dangerous. March 24th, 2026, President Marcos sat down for a rare interview with Bloomberg News. And in that interview, he said something that stunned analysts across Southeast Asia. He said the energy crisis could be the impetus, his exact word, for the Philippines and China to finally reach an agreement on joint gas exploration in the West Philippine Sea. The same West Philippine Sea where, just months ago, Chinese Coast Guard vessels fired water cannons at approximately 20 Filipino fishing boats near Sabina Shoal, injuring 3 fishermen and damaging their vessels in their own waters. The same waters where a historic international ruling gave the Philippines a decisive legal victory, a ruling China has refused to recognize to this day. And then, just days after Marcos spoke, it happened. The 24th Philippines-China Foreign Ministry consultations and the 11th meeting of the bilateral consultation mechanism on the South China Sea were held back-to-back in Quanzhou, Fujian Province, China. On March 27th and 28th, 2026, no press conference, no public announcement, no Senate hearing, just 2 delegations in a room in China. The Chinese embassy in Manila then confirmed that discussions on possible joint oil and gas exploration had made positive progress. Positive progress. And not a single ordinary Filipino was in that room. But to understand how dangerous this moment really is, you need to know what happened the last 2 times the Philippines walked through this exact same door. This is not the first time. This deal has been tried before, twice, and both times it ended in disaster for the Philippines. The first time, 2005. Under the Arroyo administration, the Philippines signed the Joint Marine Seismic Undertaking, the JMSU. The deal enabled China's state-owned oil company to conduct surveys in parts of the Philippine Exclusive Economic Zone without fully sharing critical data, and gave Chinese vessels access to areas of the West Philippine Sea where they had previously maintained little or no presence. In exchange, loans, infrastructure contracts, the same overpriced corruption-ridden projects that drained the national treasury. The JMSU covered 142,886 square kilometers. With up to 80% of that area lying within waters the Philippines has exclusive rights to under international law. The The Philippines handed China a foothold inside its own legally protected waters. The second time, 2018. The Duterte administration signed a memorandum of understanding with Beijing on November 20th, 2018. 4 years of technical working groups followed, and in June 2022, the entire process collapsed. Because every time the two sides sat down to finalize terms, China refused to operate under Philippine law. China refused to recognize Philippine sovereign rights. Without that foundation, there was no deal. Same playbook, same result. And now, in 2026, with the Philippines desperate, the tanks running low, and the people distracted by skyrocketing fuel prices, they want to try it a third time. But why does the Philippines keep going back? The answer lies in what China is actually offering, and that is where this story gets truly alarming. Here is the official explanation. The one the government wants you to believe. We need energy. We're desperate. The Middle East is on fire. What choice do we have? And let me be fair. The desperation is real. Remember, 98% dependent on Middle East oil. And yet decades passed without a single strategic reserve being built, without a serious renewable energy transition, without a plan for the day this exact crisis arrived. What this crisis reveals is not just oil dependence. It is a troubling pattern of governance. The Philippines continues to absorb external shocks in largely the same way, waiting for disruption, responding with partial measures, and framing the outcome as unforeseen. This is not bad luck. This is decades of failed energy policy, decades of choosing short-term deals over long-term independence. And now, when the reckoning finally arrives, the government's answer is to run to the very country that has been blockading Filipino fishermen from their own waters. The West Philippine Sea is believed to hold more than 6 million barrels of oil and over 7 billion cubic feet of natural gas, classified as undiscovered resources. That is Filipino oil, Filipino gas, sitting under Filipino water. And instead of building the sovereign capacity to extract it on Filipino terms, the government wants to invite China in. Here is what makes this even more enraging. A recent poll found that 75% of Filipinos prefer leaders who believe the Philippines must assert its rights against China's aggressive actions in the West Philippine Sea. 3 out of 4 Filipinos. And yet, the government is in Quanzhou. Bakit? Bakit nila gagawin ito? Why? Why would they do this? The answer lies in what China is actually offering, and what the Philippines stands to permanently lose. Now, I want you to listen very carefully, because what China is offering is not a partnership. It is a trap. Retired Supreme Court Associate Justice Antonio Carpio explained it directly. Joint development is a trap, because joint development means, from China's point of view, China owns the gas, the oil, all the natural resources. China has the sovereign rights. So, why will we accept that? Carpio's warning wasn't that no deal is ever possible. It was that any deal structured on China's terms is a sovereignty surrender, and so far, China has only ever offered its own terms. Here is how the trap works. China claims almost the entire South China Sea under its so-called 9-dash line. The 2016 arbitral ruling declared that claim illegal, without basis, void. But China has never accepted that ruling. So if the Philippines agrees to jointly explore oil in the West Philippine Sea, what does that actually mean? It means the Philippines is sitting at a table with China as an equal partner, over resources that belong exclusively to the Philippines under international law. China will not operate within a legal framework that recognizes the Philippines' sovereign rights. Nothing has changed. The China Coast Guard and the PLA Navy have been engaging in escalatory activities across Philippine waters, including a recent incident where a Chinese naval vessel nearly collided with a Philippine Navy ship. You cannot be fired upon in your own waters on Monday and sign an oil deal with the same country on Friday without sending a message to the entire world. The message is, the Philippines can be pressured into surrendering its rights. The Stratbase Institute put it plainly. China has repeatedly demonstrated that it is neither a reliable partner nor a responsible actor. Entering into such a partnership would expose the country to unnecessary risk. Ang West Philippine Sea, ayatin. The West Philippine Sea is ours, not because we say so, because international law says so. And every time this government goes back to Beijing hat in hand, they hand China the one thing no court can give back, a precedent. And here is where it gets even more alarming, because this deal doesn't just threaten sovereignty. Under Philippine law, it is almost certainly unconstitutional. In January 2023, the Supreme Court voted 12-2 to declare the previous Joint Exploration Agreement, the JMSU, unconstitutional. The court ruled it violated the Philippine Constitution by allowing wholly owned foreign corporations to participate in the exploration of the country's natural resources. 12 out of 15 justices. Not a close call. The Philippine Constitution is explicit. The exploration, development, and utilization of natural resources shall be under the full control and supervision of the state, and must primarily benefit Filipinos. Full control, Filipino benefit, non-negotiable. Legal experts have warned that any agreement giving China control, operational command, or veto power, directly or indirectly, will be constitutionally infirm and politically disastrous. And yet, despite this ruling, despite this constitutional wall, China's foreign ministry said it remained committed to pushing for joint exploration anyway, and called the unconstitutional JMSU an important step and a useful experiment. A useful experiment. Useful for whom? Not for the jeepney driver wondering if he should even go out today. Not for the family rationing electricity. Not for the 110 million Filipinos who had no idea their government was in a room in China, making deals in their name. So, let's be honest about what is actually happening here. The Philippines is in a genuine energy crisis. The pain is real. The closed gas stations were real. The 130 peso diesel was real. But desperation is not a strategy. And the difference between 2005, 2018, and today is that the Philippines is more desperate now than it has ever been. Desperate nations make the worst deals. Even if a deal were signed tomorrow, it would not produce a single barrel of oil for 5 to 10 years. This deal does not solve the energy crisis. It does not lower the price at the pump. It does not refill the tank. What it does is give China a foothold, a legal presence, in Philippine waters, under a framework that Beijing will immediately use to argue that the Philippines has implicitly accepted China's claims. The 2016 arbitral ruling was won for you, fought for you, built on Filipino lawyers, Filipino courage, Filipino dignity at sea. And right now, in the middle of a crisis that your government was not prepared for, they are handing China the one thing no court can give back, a precedent. My question, ang tanong ko sa inyong lahat, to every Filipino watching this, is this the deal you voted for? Did you vote for your government to sit in a room in Quanzhou while you were rationing fuel, while you were paying 130 pesos for diesel, and hand China a seat at the table in your own waters? 3 out of 4 of you don't want this. So why is it happening anyway? Here is the hard truth. China does not need the oil. China needs the precedent. And if this deal goes through, the precedent is set. The message is sent. And no future Philippine government, no court ruling, no international law will be able to fully walk it back. Ingatan ninyo ang inyong lupa. Ingatan ninyo ang inyong dagat. Guard your land. Guard your sea. Because right now, the people who are supposed to be guarding both are in a room in China.